Hi, my name is Jennifer Barnes. I don't think that I'm able to give anyone a true depiction of my story in a summarized version. Sadly, with losing 3 people to suicide, that gives me actual stories to share, but I'm going to try to do my best. In 2002, I was a sophomore in high school. It was a regular night. My dad was at work. My mom and I ordered pizza, and the phone rang. I thought it was a sick joke when the captain of our color guard squad told me my close friend Alicia took her life earlier that day. I don't think I even knew what suicide was before that phone call. I remember yelling at her that one of the girls who confirmed this likes to play jokes and this couldn't be true. I buried myself in my room, had a friend stop over, and we just sobbed. I went to school the next day expecting comfort, but all I remember were popular people, many who clearly peaked in high school, saying awful things and making jokes because she wasn't popular or important like them. I don't care who the hell you are. Someone's life is never a joke. Whether you're in the band, the chess club, drama, cheerleading, all lives are important. Let me just say, many of those idiots are now working nothing jobs, and their looks will soon fade. Many haven't amounted to much of anything, while Alicia will always have the legacy of a beautiful smile, being an amazing friend, loving others. I watched her give her life to God at a church event a few years prior to her death. She'll be remembered for her gorgeous red hair, making anyone she could laugh, and sticking by me as an alternate in one of the hardest seasons in our lives, as well as hers. She gave 110% in everything she did. In her case, I don't believe she had mental illness. I'm not family, but I would say she never battled depression. She was taken advantage of and put in some horrible situations, and I believe that led her to think that she had no other way out. The thing with high school is, in that moment, you feel that's all there is to life. 11 years later, I wish I could tell her none of those people matter. Not much of high school matters now at all. When people ruin your reputation, when they hurt you miserably, when they publicly humiliate you, you think that that's worth killing yourself over. That is what happened to her. Her funeral procession was practically a mile long. That the viewing hours weren't long enough because she was so loved, and there wasn't a dry eye in that church because everyone who knew her loved her. I remember my dad and her joking around a lot. He would bring her home sometimes after practice, and she'd get out of the car, and as we drove home, he'd say, "I like that Alicia. She's a good kid. She could always make my parents laugh." My parents often told me just to invite her over because she was always welcome. We even rang in the new millennium together. Fast forward a year and a few months. It was a beautiful April day, April 15th of 2003, ironically, tax day, the anniversary of Lincoln's death and the Titanic sinking. My mom was home with strep throat, and she called me to come home, and I had to call off work. My main concern that day was that of a usual teenage girl. I must find time tonight to tan for prom. Eventually, a small argument broke out, and it was the typical, my dad worrying about money. He was talking retirement and stated that $1 million would make him feel secure. It wouldn't have. He worried about money a whole lot, and he had a whole lot more money than most people ever do in their bank accounts the day he died, but it was still always going to be something that he worried about. My dad said some hurtful things to my mom, and I defended her. He had not been himself and did this often in the months leading up to his death. I was a smart-mouthed teenager, and we all said things that day. Who doesn't say things in their life? But it was no worse than any other argument had been until he cussed at me, and that was never something he would typically do, and his eyes went black. It was like he snapped. I stared into them, and it was like he left himself. I think he felt like he could never take back what he had said, and as I waited for a response to me questioning him on that, we both just walked our separate ways because he wouldn't answer me. All I remember next was walking past the bedroom and seeing him with a gun to his head. I turned around to see a bullet hole in the wall and my dad on the floor. My mom was already in the room trying to save him from himself like she did more times than she can count in their 21-year marriage. I leaned over the bed and saw him laying there motionless and yelled out, "I'm sorry," and that I loved him and knew from a year prior in Alicia's death that he wasn't going to make it. I ran outside and a neighbor asked what was happening. My mom remained inside giving him CPR. I was screaming and sobbing and literally stopped because I thought if he lives, this will be an embarrassment to him and to our family. That stigma. I told him, though, and he got on a bike and helped the 2 ambulances and multiple police vehicles find our house. On a warm day like that, all the neighbors came out and just gawked for hours while our lives were crumbling, while our dirty laundry was thrown out for everyone to see. My dad was suicidal at age 14. He hid it well. He hated his life because his parents made him pretty miserable. I have many stories he told me as a child and even letters remarking that he wanted me to know how loved I was because his parents told him he was a mistake. They never wanted him, they hated him, and never loved him. He told me stories of being beaten with hairbrushes and curling irons. This was very much mostly his wretched mother, but his father never stood up for him, so I blamed them both. We were not close to his parents, and this is why he had always remarked why. After a while, someone's self-esteem just plummets, and you can't fix that overnight. He also had severe health issues. He had autoimmune issues, and I believe he was celiac, but not properly diagnosed. He lost part of his colon at age 35. Talk about changing your life. Many people didn't even know that because he hid it very well. I didn't even know he was depressed until I was 16 and lost Alicia. Having many health issues myself, it is exhausting and frustrating, but my brain functions differently and I can see through the black. He couldn't. My dad saw the stigma in his job for getting help and truly decided not to. My mom pushed for counseling, but that was absolutely out of the question, and his family doctor wrote a script for every 3 months sending him on his way. I'm not blaming the doctor, I just think family physicians shouldn't be dealing with severe depression, and I feel my dad should have seen a psychiatrist and been properly diagnosed and treated. We feel he had bipolar, and we also found over 90 pills that he just stopped taking without telling us. This was one reason he had obviously been acting so up and down in the months prior. His death rocks me to my core because he missed and misses so much life ever since. My wedding, my daughter's birth and her life, his best friend moving back, cell phones and just being on the road. He was a truck driver. What that would have done for him to FaceTime us or to see pictures throughout the day of our lives, that would have just been incredible. It would have done a lot for his depression. The worst of all this is that he is forever marked, I'm forever marked, and my mom is forever marked. He isn't remembered for the amazing person he was, the amazing friend he was, for the jokes he told, for bringing neighbors fresh loaves of bread on their doorsteps at 2 a.m., for the incredible husband and father he was for 46 years. His suicide is our scarlet letter. People always give me the look because of how my dad died. Some it's pity, some it's disgust or anger, some it's just sheer shock, and no matter what I say, when I say my dad, it's there. How could he be so selfish? You know he went to hell, right? Nice to know others have the ability to be God and judge someone like that, huh? Yeah, I've been told that to my face. He wasn't selfish. He was in immense pain that he wanted to end. It took me 5 or 6 years of anger to see this, but I finally have come to that conclusion. My dad was everyone's best friend. Again, the viewing hours weren't long enough. He always had a joke for anyone who saw him. He gave his all in his job. He fought very hard to provide me the best in life. He knew his Lord and Savior well and had a laugh to captivate a room. He loved everybody but himself. And I know that my God can see through that and can see when someone has mental illness or not. Now, in January of 2015, after 3 attempts, my cousin Emily completed suicide. She suffered silently for a long time with mental illness, as her note had stated, but the year prior is when the attempts and avid animosity for any help began. She pulled away from the people trying to help her most and ended her vibrant and amazing life. She was incredibly smart, very talented, had the most beautiful red hair, like Alicia, had a giggle and a lot of orneriness and zest for life, and had a determination that she would do what she set out to do, that being a good thing and obviously a bad as well. Emily was one of my best friends from the time I was about 12 to 24. I must admit that family drama and anger got the best of us and broke us apart for many years later on in our lives. Through my strength and faith and maturity, I vow that type of thing cannot and will not happen again. I think all of my family has grown up in that regard and we keep ourselves in check now. The thing with mental illness with suicide is it's all preventable. Call 1-800-273-TALK. Go to your local MHA, mental health agency. You can visit the AFSP.org, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. You can visit StopSuicideNow.org. That is local for Fort Wayne, Indiana. There's also a lot of national resources there as well. The point is reaching out if you or someone else is struggling. You have no idea how vastly different and awful this grief is, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. We not only grieve the death, but the manner in which it happened. Suicide doesn't end someone's pain, it gives it to those who were left behind. There isn't enough time to even discuss that, but just please, if you learn anything from this, talk about suicide, know the warning signs, destigmatize it, do trainings like Safe Talk or QPR, be open, be honest. Please know that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Mental illness doesn't have to ruin or take over your life. There is a brokenness within a survivor of suicide that will never be fixed. Please get help.